I didn't see the leaf miner until I brought it in here. And when I was holding this up to show it to you, and you were looking at it, and as I was kind of talking, lo and behold, I looked on the very back up here, and yes, another insect gall by a totally different type of insect. I did not see that when it was laying out there. So the closer you look, the more you see. All right. So we've got this hummingbird in there, and this is a little beetle. I can't tell you which coleoptera it is, but because there's not much else to tell me what it is. All right? So birds are going to pollinate a red color for the most part. They also have that sort of trumpet shape to them, so they're going to be pollinated. Our native honeysuckle. Any know this one? Coral honeysuckle, yeah. Yeah, this is a Pam picture, by the way. Thank you, Pam. Pam took this photograph as well as this photograph on one of the properties that PAC has an easement on, and I don't remember the name.
We own it.
Oh, that's right. You own this one. See, she remembers where the photograph was taken. I just remember the photograph. Yeah. But beautiful. And once again, as you look at that plant, there's that nice red color. Insects are not going to visit this by color alone. Therefore, most of them are pollinated by birds. But insects do visit these. Insects do visit other red colored flowers. But here's what they do. Here is Aquilegia canadensis, wild columbine. Notice how that these are hanging upside down. The hummingbird will hover up underneath, do a little pollination. But look at these spurs up here. Those spurs contain the sugar water. An insect is not going to come in and, in most cases, do pollination. It's going to come up through here and it's going to drill a little tiny hole right there. You can barely see that little tiny hole. And it's going to rob the pollen. Seems fair. The wildflower tricked the hummingbird to come and pollinate it. Well, it didn't really trick it. It kind of gave it a reward. It gave it a food source. But the pollen robbers figured this out. They're like, we're not going by all that. We're just going to go straight up here, drill a little hole, get our meal, and go away. And the plant's like, wait a minute. You just took the nectar, but you didn't pollinate me. That's not fair. So those interactions become even more intricate as you begin to look closer and closer. This is wild columbine and pollen robbers. Now this is a cool plant. Jack in the pulpit. Erythema triphyllum for those folks who like scientific names. Okay, look at the coloration in that. Sort of a purplish color. How many of you have seen them that are green? I've seen them green. Okay. All right. To get purple and to get green, what color do you need to mix in? Blue. Got to have blue to get purple. You got to have blue to get green. So there's, in a sense, are acting as pollen guides to bring that insect down inside. Because this is not the flower. That is not a jack-in-the-pulpit flower. That is a jack-in-the-pulpit flower. This is inside of the jack. These are the female flowers, and the males are inside of what's called the spadex up here, the jack, if you would. Okay, so here's the flower, and look at there. They're on their way in. This funnel shape is leading them down inside of the pulpit. That red coloration is pulling them down inside, guiding them in there. And the really cool thing is if you have a jack in the pulpit and you look very closely toward the bottom where the two sides of the modified leaf fold over, you'll see a tiny little hole right there. That's how you can tell if a jack in the pulpit is a male, a female, or both. Because this plant has a survival mechanism and has a plant-animal interaction mechanism called selective hermaphrodism. It can select to be male, female, or neither from year to year. It takes a lot of energy to be a female. I don't want to get any conversations about that. all right? But reproduction takes a lot of energy, okay? If you don't have a lot of energy to spare, you don't want to utilize that extra energy for your offspring, so you're not going to put on flowers. You may only put on male. If you really have no energy left, last year it just wore you out, you don't even put on a jack in the pulpit at all. It'll come up and have the foliage, and that foliage is so it can photosynthesize, store more food, and if it does so successfully, next year does this, spends all that energy just to get an insect to come and visit it so that it can carry on its species. But what about this one? It is. This one is probably the most perfectly named orchid, the spectacular or showy orchid. Orchis spectabilis. It's a scientific name. It is spectacular. Okay? And orchids have a really incredible adaptation. In other words, something that's physical and in some cases behavioral, that's going to help that organism to survive. That's what I mean by an adaptation. It genetically inherited that material so that it puts on this long petal, or a beard if you would, that's a landing pad. If you want the insect to land here, what color do you produce there? Every color in the rainbow, or white if you would. Took a lot of energy to make that landing pad, but you don't need it back here, okay? But you want it to go back there, so you expend your energy in making colors that are blue to purple. You want it to land here and then go back into there. Okay. So they're pretty picky about who pollinates them. Not just any insect can find this, not just any insect can pollinate it. All right? There are other orchids that are just as selective, if you would, including the lady slippers. Yeah, this is pink lady slipper, one of our native orchids. And you can see there's a little bit of a crease or seam through here. Not only does the insect have to find it, but it can find it because look at the coloration, there's sort of a pink in there, so it's going to find it, but it's got to find out how to get inside. And then once it gets inside, the female reproductive structures of this plant are inside of here, just as are the male structures, the pollen, if you would. And they'll go in through the top, and this little crease has a little opening through here. Sometimes they'll come through and pop out the middle. Sometimes they will go back out through the top. But the whole idea is to attract them in there, get them to go down inside, and this is where the plants get even with the pollen robbers. No pollen inside of there. All that work by that insect to have a meal and got inside of there and there's no meal. So it's kind of back and forth in plant-animal interactions. Sometimes one gets the advantage, sometimes the other gets the advantage. Yellow lady slipper. We have two species of yellow lady slippers in the Carolinas. We have the large flowering, which is what this is, and we have the small flowered yellow lady slipper. This is in my yard. Yeah. Whatever did this is real lucky. I'm a naturalist. If we have all these insects out there, all these insects are being attracted to these colorful flowers. If they're not getting pollen, they still have to have food. What are they going to eat?
Something that's on the leaf.
They're going to eat the leaf itself. Okay? So why is it even possible that we can have plants out there that still have any leaves left on them? There are billions of insects. If we were to just go walk around Walnut Creek, we could find hundreds of thousands of individual insects out there. And hundreds of different species. But do the plants still have leaves on them? Yeah. So this is sort of a normal cycle because there are things that eat the organisms that are eating the insects. What sort of organism would eat a leaf-eating insect? Birds, other insects, yeah, reptiles, and there's a lot of really cool parasites that love to eat bugs. And they basically make that insect its host, feed upon it. So here's an example of where on this one leaf, and we're going to see this in just a moment, you've got a pyramid, if you would, of a community. You've got the plant being eaten by the insect being eaten by another insect or another organism, and then that organism being parasitized by yet another. If any of those pieces are missing, that whole pyramid collapses. So these interactions are very important, not only to the plant, but also to the animal. You guys know this one. What is this called? It went in right here and ate all over the place. It's a leaf miner. This is a leaf miner, okay? Which I showed you an example of over there just a few minutes ago. And remember, in this case, it's not going to get every leaf. It's not going to eat every piece of it. And what it does is all of this can still photosynthesize, but this part basically can't. So these interactions at the leaf level, while it does reduce the ability for the plant to be able to photosynthesize because it has less surface area, but it does provide the opportunity for these. What is that? Caterpillar, yeah. Anybody want to go for extra points? What kind of butterfly is it going to turn into? Monarch? There you go. Yep, it's going to turn into a monarch butterfly. When we plant our butterfly gardens, what do you plant? Milkweed. What else do you plant? Butterfly bush. You plant flowering plants, don't you? We typically, when we go into an area and we want butterflies, we plant food sources for the adult. We're providing nectar. But just as important, to get a caterpillar to survive, it too must have food. It's not going to eat nectar and pollen. It's going to eat foliage. The perfect plant to attract butterflies, an oak tree. Over 500 different moths and butterfly species are known to use oak trees, either for the foliage or other parts of the plant for a food source. So if you want a butterfly garden, plant an oak tree. Well, think about in nature. Most of our butterflies are going to be here and be active when we have flowering plants, but there's time periods in which those plants aren't in flower. And once those butterflies lay those eggs and they hatch out into larvae, they have to have a food source at that time as well. So if you don't have a food source for the larva, the caterpillar, you're not going to get the adult out of there. Okay, look at this little guy. What reminds you of all those black and white stripes? A zebra. As an adult, certainly it looks like a zebra swallowtail. There are the swallowtails, and there is black and white stripes with that very characteristic red spot on the hind wings. But this is a zebra swallowtail, and even before it becomes an adult, it's striped or zebra-like. But the yellow is certainly more predominant. Good source of food for birds. You plant a butterfly garden, and you end up with incredible birds in your yard. You didn't even mean to do it. You supplied the plants for the interaction between the insect and the plant. Once the insects arrive, now there's a food source for a whole other group of organisms. And then you get into that animal interaction. The birds feeding on the animals. Of course, birds feed on seed as well, so there's that whole plant-animal interaction at that level. So the zebra swallowtail. Well, we've talked a lot about plants utilizing insects for pollination, for food sources. But do plants ever turn around and eat insects? Yes, they do. And if you look really careful, this is the flower. This is the pitcher. This is the backside of it. So we get a little closer. There's the flower. Insects got to come in here, get up in here, make its way inside for the whole pollination to take place. But most interestingly to the majority of folks is what's taking place at the bottom of the plant. This is a pitcher plant, by the way. This one is mountain sweet pitcher plant, which is a listed species. This is a different species, and I can't remember which one it is right now. It'll come to me in a moment. But think about the adaptations that all the other plants had for that plant-animal interaction between an insect or a bird and that plant. Colors, patterns. Well, look what this plant does. Red's not helping a whole lot, is it? Probably not going to be real easily seen. But if you look back in here, there's sort of like veins running through here. A little darker color. There's some purples in there, some blues. Look at these little hairy things. They're all pointing down. Down in the bottom of this is this very odoriferous material. Some might say it smells bad. Some may say it smells good. Who knows? So we'll just say it's odoriferous. Down in the base, the insect comes in. It's attracted to this by the color, but it's also attracted to it by the smell. Remind you of anything you might have seen? I want to get gross. Laying in the middle of the road. Roadkill. Yep, if that animal happened to have had some of its outer flesh removed, and so you're seeing muscle underneath there and it lays out there in the sun for a little while, it starts to become a little putrid. That's why I said it has a smell. It's odoriferous, because some might think that the smell of carrion is attracting. Others may not like the smell of rotting flesh. But in this case, this plant utilizes those strategies for the insect to come over. It thinks it's going to be able to feed on carrion. Comes in, drops down, starts making its way down, gets in and goes, wait a minute, this is not carrion. Turns around to try to leave, comes up through here, but here are all these little pointy objects bumping into it. It can't get out. It tries, eventually it falls down inside of here, and down inside of there is basically a very acidic solution, a digestive juice. Falls down inside of there, it begins to digest or break it down, then the plant absorbs the material up. Why not just photosynthesize? Make some chlorophyll, bring in some CO2, mix it with a little water. Plant food is sugar. But just like you and I, plants also have to have other nutrients. Where pitcher plants and other carnivorous plants like sundews and bladderworts, and you guys are very lucky here in North Carolina to have the Venus flytrap, they all grow in conditions in which the soil does not provide the nutrients that they need in order to survive. They photosynthesize, they make sugar, but it's not enough for the organism to be able to survive. So the adaptation for that is they have this incredible structure to attract insects to the plant, and then the plant gets to eat. So here the plant has turned the tables. Before, the insect was eating the plant, now the plant is eating the insect. But there's a little bit of danger to that, though. I want to back up. Notice that the flowers are really high up on this plant, and the pictures for the most part are a little bit lower. You do not want to eat and digest your pollinator before it pollinates you. Think about that. Not to your advantage at all. All right. Everybody's brain doing all right? Is that too much for you? I've got more slides if you want me to keep going. Tell us more, tell us more. No, I'm going to keep us on time. So at this time, what I'd like to do is to ask if you guys have any questions about anything that I've gone over during the program. Something that you saw, I can go back to it or maybe give a little bit more information about it to help you out. And certainly if you have any other questions related to wildlife and wildflower interactions, whatever you want to ask me.
Okay, I would like to ask you what flower it was. It was the slide just before the rhododendron. It was a white flower, but I didn't know what it was.
Mountain laurel.
Not that one, not another oak tree. It was a kind of a white flower that had, I'd say stamens, I don't know if that's what they were, that went out in the center.
There were lots of them?
Yeah, but they were.
We got a second, we'll go back. Are you ready? In reverse really quickly.
Oh, the snowy ball.
That one?
Yeah. Oh, that.
Yeah, I had two slides with Calmia latifolia, mountain laurel. Yeah, good question though. Good. Good. Yes.
The hummingbird feeders.
Yes.
We've been told in our county that attracts the bears.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, also, if the hummingbird comes and gets its food from the feeder, does it do its job that it's supposed to, since it's already got its neck? So it would get it, suck it, and then go do what it's supposed to do to help nature. Is that right?
If
Are we
you
making welfare hummingbirds?
Oh no. If you beat your wings as many times per second, I love to do this with like kindergartners to get them to stand there because they got a lot of energy, right? And they'll just stand there and like, okay, see how fast you can flap your wings and let them fly around? It takes a tremendous amount of energy for a hummingbird to be able to just keep its body temperature up, but also to be able to fly and then certainly to reproduce. So by putting up hummingbird feeders, you are providing a food source for them, but yes, they are still going to go and visit flowers as well. What I encourage people to do, because I too live in bear country, is don't put up hummingbird feeders. The traditional hummingbird feeder. A big hanging basket of red trumpet-shaped flowers will attract plenty of hummingbirds. The bears don't come and eat the flowers. The yellow jackets don't come and get the sugar water. If you forget to put some sugar water in there and you go away, depending on what type of flower you put up there, you can go away for a few days. It might need some water. You don't want it to die. But plants are the easiest way, and you get two things. You get beautiful flowers, and you get pretty much, other than having to water it, a carefree hummingbird feeder. They never get bacteria in them in terms of like sugar bacteria and things of that
Well,
nature.
this little guy, when we took him down, we had several little hummingbirds that keep coming. to the same spot, so I think they have a good memory.
Once they know where it is.
Like a horrible person. Having food out there for 'em. And I do have
She's got them hooked, and now she took it away.
flowers out there, but because I don't want to have messes on the porch that we give them, they're fake, and that poor little dude comes up, or female, whatever, and tries to eat my fake flower. I feel double.
Yes.
So I'm going to put up what you suggest, but that does take a lot of watering and stuff.
It depends on what you use. Yeah. I encourage people to try to use native plants to the area. If it's not going to be a native plant, I encourage you to use something that won't cross-pollinate with the native species you have, and certainly that can't escape and become a nuisance in the forest around you or your yard. There's some things you can plant that will attract birds and butterflies, but they'll take over. Interestingly enough, there are some plants that are sold, and I won't tell you any names because I don't want to do that, but there are many plants that are sold as butterfly plants, and they're not butterfly plants. Okay? They're non-native, many of them. And here's where one of the big problems comes in with non-natives. Plants have a defense mechanism so that they don't get devoured by everything that comes by that eats plant material. Many of our native insects, including butterflies and butterfly caterpillars, can't feed on the non-native plant. Either A, it tastes so bad they won't eat it, or B, it's toxic to them and they won't eat it. So by displacing the native species and putting in non-native species, not only do you displace that plant, but you displace that food source, so then you don't have that insect that that bird was going to eat. So you don't have that bird there anymore. You go, where did all of my chickadees go?
Yeah, finches this year have been kind.
So there's that. Good questions though, yeah.
We have a lot of migratory birds through here, but their migration patterns seem to change, and that's because of the insects that they're following the insects when they feed to go north, right? Isn't that what they're doing? Like, why do we have the flocks of robins that we had in March here? We had thousands of robins flocking.
Yes.
Together. What was that? That's crazy.
That's crazy. You're right, they're migrating. And what they'll do is they'll begin to group up, and they're going to migrate based on several different factors. Okay? Bird migration, there are some external things that are going to cause it to go. It's getting cooler. You got to stay warm, go somewhere where it's warmer. There are less food sources, go somewhere where there's more food. But there's also internal things. Their brain clicks and says, okay, it's time for us to go. Whether there's a food source or not, they go. So part of the answer is yes, food source can affect migration in terms of short time periods. But in terms of long time periods, there's no data to really support that they're going to migrate sooner or later depending upon food availability. There's some studies, but there's not a lot.
Why do they shift around?
Why do they shift around? A lot of it has to do with weather patterns and when they're going to move. Yeah.
Just weather.
Yeah, weather makes a huge difference. Temperature especially, we're finding bird species further north than have ever been recorded. We're finding species in different areas that have never been there before. It's temperature related, and temperature is going to drive a lot of those factors. That answer your question? Okay, good. What else? Yeah?
What kind of old trees would you plant if you could provide that?
I would plant an tree that I like. I would plant one that is something that's native in the same area. Yeah, white oaks. I mean, we have a huge number of oaks. Once again, I would use something native. I wouldn't get like a sawtooth oak or something of that nature. I would do, white oaks. Depends on what's in the area.
How do you feel about invasive plants?
How do I feel about invasive plants?
We've got some, where we live, they want to get rid of all the princess flower, the palmonia,
I would support that.
and they also want to get rid of the ailanthus.
I would support that. And the kudzu, and the kogon grass,
So you're
privet, autumn olive, Russian olive, honeysuckle, Japanese honeysuckle, wisteria, non-native wisteria. Yeah, because what happens is not only do they displace native species of plants, once you displace that native species of plant, you now are displacing all of the animals that interact with that native plant that you had there. If the food source for that pipevine swallowtail caterpillar was pipevine, and an invasive comes in and out-competes that pipevine, you no longer have pipevine, you no longer have pipevine swallowtails. And then whatever's feeding on the pipevine swallowtail, it's going to affect it at all those different levels. So invasives they're going to compete with our native vegetation, but they're also many times going to take space in an area and they're not a food source.